And we're live. Okay, you know the deal. I'm going to sit here and just blather a little bit while I wait for people to join in. I'm going to take my sip of water today with ice in it because it's hot. It's super hot in New York City where I live. I had to close the windows because it's loud on my street. I have a fan going in the background. Hopefully that's not too loud. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Geek Speaks Greek. I am your geek, George O'Connor. I'm not really speaking Greek because I'm clearly speaking English. The Greek I'm speaking about is each episode of this show. I talk about a different personage from Greek mythology, be they goddess, god, hero, or monster, and just kind of do some drawings, drop some nerdy facts, because nerdy facts are the best facts, and we just have a good time with all my other fellow mythophiles out there. Hi, everybody. Nice shirt. Thank you. Yeah, if you take a look at this shirt, it's got symbols of the 12 Olympians there. Let's do a really quick breakdown. The lightning bolt's clearly Zeus. The peacock is clearly Hera. The trident is Poseidon. The grain is Demeter. The shield and spear with the boar head on it is Aries. The owl is Athena. I mean, they did the sun as Apollo, should have done a lyre, I think. But then, you have kind of the cool moon with, the arrow. That's Artemis. This is, a hammer with a torch on it, in case you can't see it. That's Hephaestus. Over here is a dove, a pink dove, Aphrodite. The Odysseus is clearly Hermes. And then finally, we see this is one of those Dionysus genealogies. No, Hestia. Poor Hestia. She's always getting overlooked. Hi, everyone. How's everybody doing today? Let's see, just a little bit of a notice up front, I'm going to have to cut today's episode a little bit short. Normally I go right up until 4. I can't do that today. I have an important business call I have to make. So I'm probably going to end this at 3:55 or so. But that's okay, because as it turns out, today's subject, Isis, I knew I was going to say that. That's wrong mythology. Iris. There's not a lot of mythology about her. There's a lot we're still going to talk about. She doesn't play a lot of parts in myths, per se. She's one of those characters. But before we get into any of that, if you've never seen this episode before, I have the best fan base in the universe because they send me amazing artwork that they do all the time. And I have a lot of stuff to show. So right off the bat, this is from Elia. And this is kind of a big picture, so I'm going to kind of zoom through. This is Eurydice at the moment when Orpheus has turned away. And see the way her hand is kind of smeared out? That's her fading away. She gives him a little forgiving smile as she disappears like a puff of smoke back to the underworld. And if you scroll down, there's Orpheus oh, shouldn't have turned around so soon. This is a great drawing. I mean, Ilya, you have grown so much as an artist. This is really exciting to see. I love this so much. And then, this is pretty funny. Her mom made a Play-Doh joke. I'm pretty sure this isn't supposed to be Play-Doh, but it is made of Play-Doh. Judging by the shield, the helmet, and the snakes coming out, I'm pretty sure that this is a sculptural representation of everybody's favorite goddess of war and wisdom, Athena. This is awesome. That is super cool. Ilya, thank you so much for sending this stuff in. Let's see what else we have today. This one is pretty exciting. This is from someone who has just recently discovered the show on YouTube. So, hi, Jamie. And Jamie sent in this painting she did of today's subject, Iris. And look at the colors, and it really is super painterly. You can see the brushstrokes and everything in it. It's really great. So, Jamie, I don't know if you're watching this live. I get the feeling you're one of the people who watches it later, but thank you for sending this in. It's really great to hear from you. Thank you so much. Actually, that's a good point also for me. If you ever want to see an episode again, or you've missed one, you can always check it out on my YouTube, youtube.com/user/George Olympians. All the episodes are up there. Yeah. I was going to make a joke. I'm I don't got a joke. So, sometimes, you just throw yourself out trying to make a joke and you're just not ready for it. But, you never make a joke if you... that didn't work. You got to swing for the fences sometimes. And sometimes it just doesn't work. And that was one of them. Okay. Now, we all know Yehi. Yehi is one of the most talented artists around. She sends in tons of stuff, which I love sharing. And so here we have... Here's a heartbroken Orpheus. Now, I leave it open to you. I think, given the way that his foot has fallen into shadow, I think this is probably Orpheus right after he's gotten out of the cave and he turned back a moment too soon to see Eurydice disappear. Could also be when Eurydice first dies, or it could be any of the sad times in Orpheus' life, because Orpheus' life stunk. He was really sad a lot. But that's a great, I guess we'll call it a drawing, even though it's got color. You know, how do you make the differentiation between drawings and paintings? Who knows? Now, I also mentioned that the role model for my version of Dionysus was Caravaggio's various paintings of Bacchus. So this one is called Drunk, and this is Yehi doing her take on a full-on Caravaggio style. Like, his eyes are not even looking the right way. It's like, whoa, buddy, I know you're the god of wine, but you really need to slow down. And then we have, like, a much more sprightly version of Dionysus. And this is a bit of text that is actually taken from my books with a slight alteration. And it reads, "For they knew what it was to be weak." It was actually originally talking about Prometheus. But Yehi has repurposed it for the purpose of Dionysus. I want you to see that little emphasis on the horns. You're like, wait, why does Dionysus have horns? Well, you'll see in my book, Dionysus. But yeah, that's not something that's made up. There is precedent for Dionysus having some horns there. We talked a lot last, so, you know, obviously, if you haven't, this is your first time joining us, you'll notice there's been a lot of reference of Orpheus. Wednesday's episode, I spoke about Orpheus, and I talked about how weird it is that Orpheus, who is normally considered a son of Apollo, is considered to have surpassed his father in music, much the way Asclepius, who is a son of Apollo, surpassed his father in healing. So basically, this is a comic, yeah, he did, and it's Apollo saying, "I have sons who have passed me, who have both passed their dad," and then close up, and they're both dead. And then there's little Hades in the background going like, what? Like, am I to blame for this? I mean, it's a little bit dark, but yeah, it is true. There is kind of this, you know, it's an interesting theme. Like I talked about how weird it is that Apollo has two mortal sons that surpass him in the things he is the god of, and they do end up both dying. Makes you wonder, Apollo, do you have an alibi? I don't know. And then here is finally, this is an Orpheus in the boat. He's saying, keep rowing the boat, keep rowing the boat. This is a reference when he was on the Argonauts. You know, I mean, you're kind of like, well, they're all these heroes. His thing was he played music, but he does save them from the sirens, as I talked about. And then, there's one last one I forgot. Okay. This is a little bit of Orpheus from Hades Town. Should I try this? Should I try doing... Have you seen Hades Town? Orpheus is obsessed with this piece of music he's writing. It turns out it's actually not a piece of music he wrote. It's a piece of music that was old before time. It was the love song of Hades and Persephone. And it starts off with this la 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 la. I can't do it. It's way out of my range. La la la. And that's the bit. But it's great. And like also... it makes a flower grow because it brings back spring. Hades Town is the best. If you can't see it right now. If you ever get a chance to see Hades Town, I recommend seeing it because it's incredible. And it's still the original cast right now if you go and see it. But listen to the soundtrack. It's amazing. Okay, so this is from Nora and Drake, the brother-sister duo, who always delight us with their great paintings. Here is, oh man, there's some dark stuff. We know what this one is. Here's Orpheus and Eurydice on their wedding day, and there's the snake that Eurydice is about to step on, and it's about to end badly. It's interesting, I have actually never drawn Eurydice, so this is people's own versions. Both people have drawn pictures of Eurydice have drawn her as a blonde. I think personally, I always pictured her as a brunette. So, and that's not really important for anything. Now this one is, well, I think this is a skinny dipping Aphrodite. What? Kind of looks like the poster to Jaws. Do you guys ever see the movie Jaws? That's great. That's a great painting. That's, drawing. That's also from Nora. And then here is an Aphrodite assembled on the shore. I had mentioned in an episode previously that I don't think I'd ever drawn Aphrodite in a color other than an aqua. But if you look at early episodes of the Olympians, like the earlier volumes, she does appear in some different colored dresses. And so I think that was used to like draw her in pink, which I have to admit, she looks pretty good in pink. Maybe she should change up her dress more often, you know? And then Drake, Nora's little brother, he drew an Aries. You can tell he's Aries because he's blood red. And that's a Cyclops in the background. And of course, we have Helios up in the sky. Although this Helios, there's actually not a figure in there. It's just Helios as the sun. Nora and Drake, thank you guys so much for sending stuff. If you want to see some really cool Nora and Drake, on my Instagram right now, they sent in a picture that they took of the two of them as all 9 muses. I had to cut it up into little pieces because it was so big it wouldn't even fit. It's amazing. It's a great work of art, and I'm so glad that they did that. And it was inspired by Shiloh's version where he did it himself of the 3 fates. So I don't know. How did I get so lucky to have such talented people like writing into my show? I don't know. I'm very lucky. Now this one is super interesting to me. Moira has been studying her artwork. I love Moira's artwork. This is a picture she did of, well, you can see, this is Orpheus, and then he's surrounded by his stones, right? So this is him, like, because the thing was he would even make the stones themselves. He could charm the stones. And then there's this goddess just twirling around back there. But what's super interesting about this, and I'm putting out a plea for Moira watching, Moira's dad said she also had a reinterpretation of the gods, but she wouldn't let me send that one. Moira, I want to see that one. If you could send it in. I understand. I don't want to force you, but I would really love to see that because that sounds so interesting. Like, how did you reinterpret them? That sounds such a cool idea. Okay. This is Eleanor. Eleanor is another one of those people who draws all the time and keeps getting better and better. And this one we could see, here we have Orpheus. He's playing his lyre, and he is doing it before Hades and Persephone. They're on their thrones. So this is really interesting. Like, you're really growing. Like, we're seeing like some depth of field in the picture. Like, I am super impressed with your ability to put together a scene. Like, this is just amazing. So thank you so much. Now this one, all right, there's some great stuff coming up here. One of them I think is going to be a little bit too light for us to see, so I might not be able to show it. Oops. This is from Little Serial. There's a drawing of Odysseus. No, guys. How many times have I said this? Of Orpheus, and this is him traveling to the underworld, and like all the shades are swirling about him, and the darkness is retreating, and his music is literally lighting his way, right? And it's a beautiful drawing with beautiful colors. Now this is interesting, because I didn't know Little Serial could do this. Little Serial has another style of artwork entirely that they sent in. Yeah, there's a really cool one it's kind of a joke on the whole how Orpheus protected the Argonauts from the Sirens. It's a little bit too light and blurry for us to see, but I can share this one. This is Little Serial described as the real reason Eurydice turned away. So here Orpheus is outside the cave, and he's saying to himself, I'll read it because it's backwards, I can't wait to turn around and see my wife. And we see the reason why that Eurydice is not there is because a giant piano is falling from the sky. I guess it fell off Olympus or something. I don't know. That's really bizarre. It made me laugh out loud, so I really love it. I think we have time for maybe like one more thing. Sound good? Yeah, sounds good, right? Like I said, we're going to go a little light today anyway. Oh, this is from Megan, so it's not one thing. Megan writes in, draws a ton of stuff. This one I thought was really funny. This is the band of Marsyas. Marsyas is the satyr who was skinned alive by Apollo. So that's Marsyas himself. He's playing his Iulos, the double flute. He's joined by Pan on the panpipes. There's just this kind of generic satyr here who does actually kind of look like Amphilos, who was the lover of Dionysus. So maybe that's him. He's playing a bongo. And then there's Apollo himself like, why am I in this band? I hate everything you all are doing. So I love that drawing. What else do we have? Okay, and this one, because this is a cool thing that Megan does, is a lot of times she will draw the character in advance. She came about with a picture, this is a shot of Iris, who we're going to do today. It's a really beautiful drawing. And it's basically, the caption of it is like, Zeus asks, how come you're a rainbow? And she's like, because it's so beautiful. And everyone's like, why are you asking, Zeus? He's like, look, I just wanted to know. And we'll get to that. Why is she a rainbow? CVQ Llama, did you get a chance to screenshot my art today? Because I did send it on Monday. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't. So I apologize. For some people, they've had a hard time sending artwork to my Gmail, which is... Did it the wrong way. GeorgeO'ConnorBooks@gmail.com. I'm not really sure why that happens. There's another, you can also try sending it to my other Gmail, which is GeorgeO'ConnorEvents@gmail. That might help. But sometimes, because there's people will send me stuff on other ways, when I'm putting together a show, sometimes I forget. So CVQ Llama, I'm sorry. Try to send it to me again, and I'll try to include it on Monday's episode. I'm very sorry about that. Finally, as our last bit, This is, as we know, Megan likes to ship the idea of Hermes and Athena as a couple. And this is like their first meeting where Hermes is very rudely lifting up her skirt to look at her feet, which I guess he has a little bit of a foot fetish. And he's all like, ooh, what have we here? And in the next page, Athena picks him up. She's like, what are you doing? That's very rude, which I agree. I mean, I get you're a baby, but don't go lifting up someone's skirt just to look at their feet. That's weird. And he kind of explained, and he's doing his Hermes stuff. He's laying on the charm. He's like, oh, your eyes are so majestic and you're so beautiful and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, huh? And then Aphrodite appears, and Aphrodite's like, oh, you guys make a cute couple. And Athena warns her. She's like, don't you dare. And so I'm wondering, Megan, in your idea, did Aphrodite make them fall in love? Is this a thing that she did? I don't know. That's interesting. This is like your idea that they came together as in a relationship. So, I don't know. I would love to hear more about that. So, thank you, everybody. Oof, wait, my thing sent off. I need to look at it for a second. Thank you, everybody who sent in artwork today. Again, I'll hold it up. If you got stuff to send, please send it to email, georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. If for some reason that's not working, try georgeoconnorevents@gmail.com. And we'll try to figure it out, because I'm sorry some people can't get through to me. The rest of you, if you want to catch an episode that you missed before, go to my YouTube, youtube.com/user/GeorgeOlympians. And that's enough of me blabbing. Let's start talking about Iris. Now, let me first apologize. I'm already a sweaty mess. It's very hot here today, like I said. Iris is the goddess of rainbows. She is the messenger of the gods. And you're like, wait, isn't Hermes the messenger of the gods? And that is true. They have more than one messenger. And increasingly, as time went on, in fact, when you first meet Iris in the Iliad, that's probably the series of myths where she plays the biggest role. She acts as both a messenger to Zeus and to Hera. But as antiquity wore on, as the ancient Greek and Roman eras lasted, she increasingly became associated more and more with Hera. So she eventually becomes kind of Hera's own personal messenger, which makes some sense. Because even though Hera is, let's say, out of all of Zeus's children who are not her own, she does seem to like Hermes the most, she has to know Hermes is like Zeus's right-hand guy. You know, Hermes and Athena are always on Zeus's side, and they always help out Zeus. And a lot of the time, Hera's not working with Zeus. So she needed to find someone that she could rely on her own, and that person was Iris. Now let's talk a little bit about Iris. The Romans called her either Arche or Arcus, which means like an arc, like a rainbow arc. Iris, by the way, is the Greek word for rainbow. It's also the part of her eye that has color. It's also a flower. Her dad was this guy named Taumos, or perhaps Tahaumos, which means like it's like a word that means like a wonder or a miracle or something. He's one of those sea gods. I've talked before in episodes how I'm kind of like, there's too many sea gods, you know? Like, okay, we have Oceanus, which makes sense. He's the ocean, right? And then, you know, there's also that guy Pontos, who's like, oh, wait, where do you come from? And it's like, oh, Gaia begat you. Okay, and I kind of left that out of the Greek, my versions, because it just got too confusing. So Thalamus is a son of Pontos and Gaia. He's just one of those dudes. But what's kind of cool about him, the reason I'll give him some acceptance here, because normally I'll just be like, too many water gods, let's just streamline this. Remember how I said his name is like miracle or wonder? He's like the wonder of the sea. He was the god of the embodiment when you're out on the ocean and you're looking out and it's just so beautiful and you see it before you and you're just struck by this singular beauty, and that's what he's the god of. And I'm like, I like that, actually. That's really kind of poetic. And then it made me realize there's so many sea gods because the ocean really played an important part in the lives of a lot of the ancient Greek people. They were amazing sailors, and they went all over the world doing that. I live on an island called Brooklyn. Well, actually, it's called Long Island, just at the tip of it. So the water, even though it surrounds me, it's not part of my life the same way. So it occurs to me, it kind of makes sense when you think about it that way, that there would be a lot of different gods about different aspects of the sea, right? Because there's so much to the sea. So it's like a lot just for, like, say, Poseidon to handle, or a lot for just Oceanus to handle. Her mom, because I'm getting kind of like down this thing about Talmos, right? Her mom was a Oceanide, a daughter of the ocean, Oceanus, named Electra. Electra is one of those names that appears in myth a lot. This is not the Electra that is the daughter of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra. That's the most famous Electra. This is not the Electra that is one of the Pleiades. This is not the Electra that's one of the Danaides. This is not the Electra that is... Man, I think there's one that's like associated with Thebes or something. This Electra, she is in one of the Oceanides. And Electra, the name... And this, it's also not the Electra that's Daredevil's girlfriend. Electra means amber, right? And you're like, what does that mean? She was the goddess of like amber-colored clouds. You're like, wait, what does that mean? So she's the goddess of like the clouds at sunset. So think of this, how poetic this is. You're a sailor, you're on the ocean. You're looking out and you're struck with this moment of beauty, this thalamus. You see this beautiful, beautiful sea stretching ahead of you. You're like, and then maybe the sun's a little low on the horizon and the sky has this kind of golden glow to it, right? And then that's Electra. She's the amber tinted, like the glowing clouds, and that's beautiful. And then they have a kid who is the rainbow that bridges between the two of them. So just imagine that, if you will. You're on the ocean, beautiful sea in front of you, beautiful clouds, and in between, this multicolored band of light that ties them together. I'm like, oh, I get this now. This all makes sense. Because before it was like too many gods, but now I'm like, I got it. It all makes sense. Now, she literally does tie in the idea, like the sea and the sky together. One of her jobs is described that she's refilling the clouds. Because they saw that she would stretch into the water, Iris, and then she would go back up to the clouds. She would scoop up water from the sea and bring it back to the clouds so it could rain. That's also very poetic. I like that a lot. So, talked a lot about her parentage. Part of the reason is, like I said, in myth, like she doesn't have like kind of a cool story. There's not any story that at least I could find where she has like kind of her own side adventure. Like I mentioned, she appears a lot in the Iliad. She's mentioned all the stuff I just mentioned about her family. That comes from Hesiod, as you know, Hesiod above all. And she appears in the Iliad where she does a lot of messenger stuff. Like I said, working for both Zeus and Hera. And like another cool thing in the Iliad. So if you ever get a chance to read the Iliad, it's very long and very difficult. But some of the descriptions are so cool. And one of the things they describe her as is storm-footed. That's one of her titles. They have these kind of titles they attach to them. And I think, I don't know, like I could picture like somehow that describes her movement. She's super fast. She's like the speed of light because she is light, right? But the storm-footed might also mean because she comes after a storm. Because, you know, that's, of course, when we see rainbows. It's been raining, and all of a sudden it just breaks through the air, and you see this. I'm like, oh, that's a cool bit of description. They have some cool descriptions. Homer has some really nice descriptions of her, like, delivering messages. There's this one sequence where she dives into the sea. There's another part where she goes to get Hypnos for Hera. Some really cool stuff. Like, it's very poetic. Let's see what else. I think at this point, I want to draw her really quick. And I'm going to do something I haven't done yet on this show. I always tend to draw in black and white, right? But this is literally the goddess of rainbows. I think today I need to go some full color. So if you've watched this before, you know when I talk about how I design the gods, one of the things I do is I search through old texts, something written by an ancient Greek or ancient Roman or somebody who believed in them, looking for actual physical descriptions of the gods. And if I find something written down, I'm like, I have to use that because, you know, that's important. The Greeks were very hesitant to mention physicality about their gods for the most part because the gods changed shape. We know this. They didn't really have forms. But every once in a while, you find a few things. And there's two things that come up about Iris's appearance. One, she has golden wings, which I'm like, cool. You know, not a lot of winged characters. And the wings are super interesting. Because remember I said her parents are Thamos and Electra. You know who else they had as kids? The Harpies. Do you guys know the Harpies? Harpies were these winged women who, like, you see them actually in the Argonauts, in the Argonautica by Apollonius. They're pretty scary beasts. I'm going to do an episode on them one time. They're like her sisters. So it's kind of interesting, like all their kids have wings and like, I feel like Iris is the one who turned out like, she's like the overachiever. She gets like a nice internship with the Queen of the Gods and the Harpies are kind of like scary monsters that eat people. I mean, I don't know. So she has golden wings. I think I just chose the wrong color. And she's described as wearing a cloak of many colors because she's the rainbow. This all makes sense. I decided I was going to give her pink skin. This barely shows up, huh? Maybe I should do some of this in outline. This is actually more of an orange skin. I made a mistake here. So she's got orangey pink skin. How's that? Oh, you know what? I'll just go for the line with the darker pink. I'm just giving her a very placid, very even-tempered expression. She's one of those characters who doesn't have a huge amount of characterization, though I did find an old comedy that was written by an ancient Greek, I forgot who it was, where they had some funny bits where she's just kind of, like, one of the characters is mistaking her for a mortal, and she's getting kind of indignant. So she has some personality. I do enjoy that. What other colors do I have here? I gave her blonde hair. I don't really give too many of my characters straight up just yellow hair, and she's one of the few ones, but it makes sense. It's part of the rainbow, right? So far she has this very radiant appearance, almost fiery. So that's one of the reasons why I had a lot of colors on her that were cooler to knock her back a little bit. She has this kind of blue headband, which is in the symbol, shape of an arc, just like her name. The Roman name is Arcus. And then her robe, I gave it, well, I'm looking to make sure which one overlaps. She had like kind of a darker blue robe on the top. And then, I have so many pens uncapped at once right now. I think this is green. Then the other side of her robe was green. And this pen's slightly dry. So let's see if I have another pen to go over it. That just exploded across my room. Ah, better. How's that looking so far? And I don't know why I ask you that. I can't hear you guys. Pink. Let's draw her feet. Her legs coming down. You know, I don't know if I've actually drawn her feet. I have to take a look. She's appeared in 3 of my books so far. She's plays her most significant role in Aries, which is a retelling of what the gods are doing during the Iliad. And we first meet her where she's actually been dispatched down to the battlefield to collect Ares, who's been kind of watching the goings-on. And Zeus himself is the one who sends her in that instance. Another role that she plays that's kind of important in myth is the birth of Apollo and Artemis. Now, if you've seen that episode before where I talk about Apollo and Artemis, their birth, you know it was a difficult birth. Their mother was Leto, and she was chased out of Hyperborea. Well, not chased yet. She left Hyperborea, her homeland, in the form of a wolf to disguise herself because she knew Hera would be mad that, like, basically, there's this other lady having a kid with your husband. 2 kids, as it turns out. Hera, of course, finds out because you can't hide stuff from Hera. And she passes an edict, like a law. She's like, no place on earth, no spot of dry land can give respite to Leto for her to give birth. And also Hera is the goddess of childbirth, so she kind of makes it so like Leto is pregnant for like a long time, way more than 9 months. She's holding 2 babies. It's super hard. And Leto travels around the world, and basically every time she's going someplace, Iris appears before her. Not before her, like in front of her. Like if she's walking to that town over there, before she gets to that town, Iris, who's way faster, appears there and announces to everybody, you can't help her. Hera herself has said that no place on earth can give her, no place on dry earth can give her any place to be safe. And that to give birth. In some versions of the story, there's a few people who tell that. Callimachus does a version of that. I think Ovid has this too. In some versions, Ares is actually actively chasing her as well. Most famously, Python, the snake from before the times began, who's like a child of Mother Earth, this giant monster, is also chasing Leto. But she plays this part in kind of this persecution. So I imagine there's probably some tension between Iris, Apollo, and Artemis. And certainly Leto, I imagine. She's like, oh, you're that lady who comes to town before me and made it so I could have a baby. Yeah, I hate you now. Let's see. Now, I also gave her... Ooh, I need some different blues. She has different blue robes that hang off her arms. And she can kind of like throw it up and make some cool shapes with that. She has oh, this is green. It was supposed to be like a blue-green belt, but you know, look at my marker that I have. Finally, I'm going to draw those wings. Now, I could draw them in yellow, but that's not going to be really easy to see. So what I'm going to try doing is drawing them in this orange first. And then we'll just give her some golden highlights. It's interesting to me that so many of the stories specifically say she has golden wings. And I wonder if the golden wings are meant to actually represent like sunlight coming through the clouds first before you see like the rest of the rainbow. Or maybe it's just part of the rainbow. We all know that famous rhyme, Roy G. Biv, to remember the colors of the spectrum. It's a little bit of a cheat. I mean, why is indigo in the colors? It's kind of like a tertiary shade. I think it's just there to make the rhyme work. But it's red, orange. So let's see. She doesn't really have a red. I guess I could have added some red in there. She has a pink. That's close enough, right? Red, orange. She definitely has orange, yellow, green, blue. If you want to count indigo, that counts as indigo. But I'm going to count it more as violet. So, yeah, that's my version of Iris. So, what else? Oh, something else that... I'm going to use some black just to draw some details here, because also I threw all the rest of my pens on the floor. Sometimes in myth, she actually is carrying a staff very similar to Hermes, like a caduceus. It's called the Herald Staff. Hers tends not to have as much of a serpentine quality, though you can actually look at it and see how it's certainly derived from the same shape. You might be tempted to say that there's a connection between them, like sort of a love connection, the way like some people have done for Athena, looking at you, Megan, or the way like seems to be a link in a lot of stories between Hecate and Hermes. But most sources agree that she doesn't have children. Later in the Roman period, she seems to get married to Zephyrus, one of the winds, Zephyrus, and has a child. But for the most part, like during the Greek period, she seems to be a maiden goddess. So, I don't know, kind of interesting. My take on her, I mentioned this kind of offhand, and this is just me doing my speculative take where I read all the sources I can find and then kind of figure them in. I do feel like she is the overachieving daughter of an alternate family of gods. Like, you know, so you have this kind of relatively minor sea god. Like, what I totally appreciate what he's the god of, like supporting like the wonder of the sea. That's beautiful. And also her mother being like the like beautiful clouds. That's just, it's like these kind of like minor aspects of a larger thing. And then she's the rainbow. And the rainbow, of course, everyone who's seen a rainbow, it's one of the most phenomenal things to see in nature. So she's this bright, shining light that literally bridges the earth and the heavens. And it makes only sense that she would get a job with the Olympians. Even though, you know, most of the Olympian order, you see, for the most part, they're all people who are pretty much closely blood related to Zeus. You go back to Gaia and she's related to Zeus, but it's back a few generations. She's like a distant cousin. And I feel like she's like the super duper capable kid who wanted to elevate her status. She's like, you know what? Those are the people in charge. I'm going to get a job with them. And sure enough, she is a figure who, although doesn't really have any mythology of her own, she's a pretty major character in that she appears a lot in art. Mostly like vase art and like mosaics and stuff. Like I couldn't really find any statues of her, maybe because the wings were hard to do. I don't know. But she's this character who always kind of hangs around there. Like I said jokingly, she has an internship with Hera. That's the way I kind of think of it. And she is this like seemingly very trusted character of Hera. In fact, in some versions of the art, she's actually Hera's cupbearer, which is a role that we normally see taken by Hera's daughter Hebe. But you'll see sometimes there's this figure holding the pitcher of water next to Hera, and she has wings. And then you're like, oh, that's not Hebe. That's Iris. So it's kind of interesting. And she certainly has done some of Hera's dirty work. I'm really interested in this character. It's a character that, if I were ever to do stories that weren't directly calling them myths, and just kind of like exploring further personalities, I would love to really explore more about her. Like this idea that she's this goddess who's bridging heaven and earth and who gets a job with the Olympians. She'd be a great point of view character, actually, right? Like, you know, like these are the big bosses and I come from a little bit remote place, but, you know, I got some cool powers and let me see what I could do to make my way in the world. Let's see. We have some questions here. Does the ancient arts depict her multicolored? Actually, yeah, let's just switch it to doing questions here, because I think I got pretty much everything I want to say. So the texts mention her as multicolored. Most of the art you'll find of her, unfortunately, is vase painting, which tends to be like dichromatic, only 2 colors. So you don't see much of that. There's some mosaics where you see that she has a robe that is like kind of maybe meant to be like shimmery. And some of the texts actually will describe also that like her robe is maybe not like so much multicolored as like a silvery kind of pearly sort of fabric that reflects all the colors in it, which is also an interesting idea. But for the most part, because not a lot of stuff has survived to us as far as like where she's the main figural thing, I don't know of too many things where they show her super multicolored. I'm relying more on textual descriptions. Is she immortal? Asks Renka. No, she's full-on goddess. To compare it, so her dad is a god, although certainly a more minor god. Her mom is one of the Oceanides. So she's probably, that's similar to actually like Athena, whose dad is a god and whose mom is one of the Oceanides. She's definitely not on the level of Athena, because her father is certainly quite a few steps down from Zeus. But to give you an idea, so she's definitely a full-on immortal goddess. Who is faster, Hermes or Iris? That's a good question. So I actually said just now that Iris could move at the speed of light. But the ancient Greeks didn't actually have that concept of speed of light. What you will see her mentioned as in text a lot is she is as swift as the wind, which can be pretty fast, certainly. But we've worked out before, if you watch the Hermes episode, I talk about it. Hermes has so many jobs. But this is my personal take on Hermes, right? Like, I've never actually said this in the book, but I kind of mention interviews and stuff, and I think it's in the Geek Notes, so maybe it is in the books. Hermes has so many jobs that require him to be in so many places at once that he's literally moving so fast that when you see Hermes in the books, when he's talking to someone, he's normally actually zipping back and forth between like dozens of other places at the same time, so fast that nobody even notices that he's doing this, because he has all these jobs. Basically, like, remember, his job is to bring people to the underworld when they die. People are always dying. There's a lot of them. His job is to bring you dreams when you sleep. That's always happening. Wherever there's money being exchanged, he's there. All these things. He's so busy all the time that I feel like he moves on a level that's so far beyond the speed of light that it's into some sort of weird quantum thing that probably we would need, like, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson to explain to us. Now, I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say she's certainly faster than the wind. She's at least as fast as the speed of light because she is light. She's a rainbow. The rainbow is going to be the speed of light. Now, can she do the same sort of acts of Hermes where he's moving in a million places at once? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe, like, that's the difference. Maybe that's why she's not a full... Maybe that's why he's 100% Olympian. Like, he's, like, big 12 Olympian, and she's kind of adjunct Olympian. You know, just kind of, like, hanging out there. Or maybe she is capable of that, just doesn't have the reason to. She's certainly more well-behaved than Hermes, so everybody didn't feel like they had to give her a billion jobs to keep her out of trouble. So, I don't know. That's a great question, though. I love that sort of stuff when we kind of try to figure these things out. It's so fun. Do you think she agrees with Hera? Or does she just do what she's got to do to stay on Olympus? Now that's interesting, right? Like, is she someone who actually truly sympathizes with Hera? Or is she just like, this is my best bet to get up to the big leagues to stay with her? Okay, there's a little bit of language in the Iliad, which is definitely, if you really want to read about her, about Iris, that's where she makes the most appearances. You would actually probably think she is one of the main gods in there for the amount of appearances she makes, although she's always appearing in a subservient fashion, right? She does seem to have a little bit of agency of her own in some of the bits. She does some things on her own a few times. And her language about Hera, I think, shows that she has a true affection for her. And if you think about Hera's behavior, really, the only people Hera is ever a jerk to is Zeus, or someone who is a byproduct of Zeus's infidelities for her, like one of his kids, or one of Zeus's lovers. She's not I think at heart, Hera is actually probably was meant to be a pretty kind goddess, and she was saddled with a terrible relationship that made her act out in ways that are unflattering and not good for anyone, right? So I feel like she probably actually really relates to Hera, and I'm going to just go pop on my pop psychology hat. That might be why she's a maiden goddess. She spends all her time helping out the lady who is the goddess of marriage as her personal attendant, as her personal messenger, and she sees all the stuff that all the pain that this has caused her. It's probably enough for her to be like, you know what? I'm good just being by myself. And I guess Hera keeps her busy enough that she doesn't notice that she's never really sad or lonely, and she has, friends and things, I assume. So yeah, I think she really does like Hera. That's a great question. But yeah, you're right. Mr. Wizard says she does still have to obey her queen. I'm going to leave this up to a matter of opinion. You could decide whether or not, what other options does she have? Hera is the queen of heaven. And she's part of the heavens, Iris, so maybe she has to. But I like to think, just for the sake of this poor immortal goddess, that she at least likes her boss. Would you feature my new Olympian-based comic book series called Long Live Metis, about Metis taking over Olympus? Hey, if you send me some of this and you have it on a place online, I'll be happy to give a shout out. I want to read that, actually. This must tie into we've had talks before, if you've never seen this episode before, about this show before, about who would be maybe a better ruler of Olympus than Zeus. Because while Zeus is good in some ways, he doesn't persecute you for believing in other gods and stuff, but he's not a super hands-on god, which is maybe good, but there's probably people who would be better at it. He spends most of his time looking around to have fun. We had talked about how maybe Metis' daughter Athena would be a better choice, and in fact she was fated to be the new choice, and Zeus bent fate. So this is an idea where Metis, please do it and send it to me. I'd love to see it. I wonder if she is friends with Hebe. Yeah, I think she is. I think especially because, we're talking Iris again. I think she is friends with Hebe, especially because their jobs overlap so much. Especially because it seems like, at least in some art, they're almost confused. Sometimes you'll see a vase painting, and there's a figure or two standing next to Hera holding a vase, and you're like, well, one's probably Hebe, but one's maybe Iris. And if you can't see the wings, you really can't tell. Or if sometimes a lot of times they actually write their names underneath it. That's pretty good to take away. But yeah, so I think they would be friends. I think, especially poor Hebe. I have a lot of feelings for Hebe. Hebe has a good couple little scenes in Dionysus that I was happy to get to write. But Hebe she's got the same parentage as Hephaestus and Aries. But I always refer to her as the forgotten Olympian, because she's kept in this position of being an attendant to her mom. She's the goddess of youth, and youths are not always, but often overlooked and not respected as much as they should be. And that's kind of Hebe's bag. So I think she would really associate with this other goddess who's kind of, I don't mean this in a damning way, but she's kind of like a second grade goddess. Not second grade, second class. She's not one of the big Olympians, but she's there with the Olympians, just like Hebe. So I think they'd have a lot in common. So Mr. Wizard writes, I always assumed Hera became kind of so intensely aggressive because that Zeus violates her domain of marriage. She can only go against Zeus so much, and it creates impossible conflict, and she snaps. That's exactly how I read it, too. She's literally the goddess of marriage, and she's married to a guy who continually destroys the concept of marriage. So, yeah, and we talk about this not just with Hera and Zeus. When you're an Olympian, you're really limited in how much revenge you could take on another Olympian because they are immortal and invulnerable. And you also have to live with them forever. So we tend to see them take it out by a proxy. They take it out on the mortals they know, or the demigods, or their property, and things like that. So yeah, Hera does some terrible things to people who don't deserve it otherwise. People who are just children of Zeus, they didn't get to have any say in how they were born. But it's kind of understandable also why she does it. And I do ultimately blame Zeus for that, but also Hera is one of my favorites, so maybe I'm a little bit. This is a great question. Greek mythology fanatic writes, when Iris had to make sure Leto could not give birth, do you think she wanted to or not? Again, pure speculation on my part. I think, on one hand, she was proud to serve as her queen. This is one of the instances where she really takes front and center, And it's not just in like one retelling this is in all the retellings of the story, like the Homeric hymn, Callimachus' version. She comes and she is the mouthpiece of Hera. So I think she had a lot of pride in what she was doing. And I think, honestly, she maybe wouldn't be mad at Apollo and Artemis for being born, but I think she could be mad at Leto. It's not, Leto was up in Hyperborea, which is like, kind of a hidden land, but she certainly knew who Zeus was, and she certainly knew who Hera's was. So she could be, I think that Iris would have been like, yeah, you deserve to be punished. Maybe she does. I don't think she's a rainbow. She's probably not full of hatred and ire. So maybe she did feel some bad for her sometimes, but I think she took a lot of pride in being the official voice of Hera on Earth, coming down and appearing before everyone wherever she went. It was, I speak for Hera, and Hera says this. So I think it was kind of tinged. It was probably like maybe not her favorite thing in the world to do. She probably would have rather been doing something different, but she got to aid her queen in a very public and important way. So that probably gave her a lot of pride in her work. Elia asks, if Hades isn't a true Olympian because he lives in Hades, then how is Dionysus an Olympian if he's always partying and drinking on Earth? Good question. Dionysus does start out on Earth. And there's many stories of his wanderings through Earth, but eventually, and you'll see this in my book Dionysus, working on it now, he does ascend to Olympus. Now, all of the gods and goddesses on Olympus do come down to Earth from time to time. But if you read the story and you kind of piece it together chronologically, the vast majority of the stories of the wanderings of Dionysus, when he's just kind of partying and drinking and turning people into dolphins and other things he does, that all happens before his ascent into Olympus. Basically, at that point, he's just a demigod. He is a son of Zeus and a mortal woman who has some powers, but could still very much be killed. In the way I view it, it's kind of when he goes down to the underworld and literally defeats death, which is a story I'm not going to get into here. There's a reason I haven't done an episode on Dionysus yet, because I'm doing his book still. And then after that, he's literally conquered death, and that's when he ascends to Olympus. And that's when he becomes truly an Olympian. And then he's like this new type of Olympian. He's the only Olympian with a mortal mom. And I feel like at that point, much the way when Heracles, he burns off, after his death, he literally dies a mortal death. And the immortal side of him is burned away in the funeral pyre, and the immortal part of him goes to Olympus. I feel something similar happened, but less traumatically, to Dionysus. In traveling to Olympus, in traveling up Olympus, leading his group of people, his followers with him, he ascends into godhood. And that mortal part of him, which is always lesser, not just because it's less powerful, but he had a little bit of God extra on the side. He was sewed into Zeus's thigh, which gave him an extra juice. It's like the mortal part is he's transfixed into something more than just a demigod. He becomes, at that point, a true Olympian. Can we do Zeus on Monday? You know what? I think we should. I've beaten around this bush long enough. We haven't done Zeus. It's the biggest omission yet. He's gotten a little bit of a mention in the episode about Kronos, but it's kind of just like a little bit of baby Zeus stuff and maybe a few other things. Let's say this for sure. On Monday, we're going to do a full-on exploration of the king of the gods himself. The dude who is the centerpiece of all of these stories in one way or another. Who's everything revolves around him, for good or for bad. Let's do Zeus, king of the gods, on Monday. Yay. Let's see what other questions we have. Will you be making more Little Olympians comics? That might be good and funny way to try alternate viewpoints. Oh, that's an interesting idea. So Little Olympians, you can see them at various spots. I've done a handful of comics of them, often for other websites. I actually did a Little Olympians comic for Free Comic Book Day. It was a story for the CBLDF, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, which was like a kind of Little Olympians version of Athena, Hermes, and Arachne, telling that story. I would like to do more Little Olympians. It's one of those things I always kind of think of the idea, should I do a whole Little Olympians book? So, all right, I have all you people who watch me now. And a lot of you have little brothers or sisters who are into Olympians, but maybe you're a little bit too young. I'm like, what if I did a Little Olympians version of these stories where it's kind of a little bit sillier, it's more my silly side, and I do versions where I could kind of get in there. Maybe they talk more to the reader. It's a little bit more tongue-in-cheek. And it's the Little Olympians versions, because they're also super fun to draw. I don't know. I mean, if you think it's a great idea, maybe shoot me an email at georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. Or you can write me a comment on my, my Instagram or something. It's something it's an idea I've played around with a lot. Something I should do one of these days, I think. Let's see what else we have here. I think we have at some point. Oh, would I do an episode on Hebe? That episode would be a great day to premiere my new comic book series, Long Live Metis. I not only have I done a series, I've already done an episode of Metis, and I'm pretty sure I have done Hebe. It may have been earlier on where I was doing her with other people. I've been doing this now for so long. There's so many things up on my YouTube, I'm not even sure myself. But it looks like somebody says, I think we did do Hebe. Maybe, I don't know. I think I've done Hebe already. But I think it was with someone else. The problem with Hebe, and there's no real problem with her personally, the problem with doing stories about Hebe is Hebe suffers from much the same fate as Iris, where she's never really the centerpiece of any story. She's kind of an attendant in the background. Probably her biggest starring role is when Hera marries her off to the divine half of Heracles. But even then, she doesn't really do much. So Hebe, for me, is always a character I've had a lot of sympathy for, because I imagine a rich inner life for her. I know what it's like to be the kid everyone overlooks. I think we all have had that experience at one point. She's at the center of creation. They didn't create stuff, you know what I'm saying? She's at the center of the world, and the beings who control everything are around her, and her job is just to serve them drinks, and most of them are her brothers and sisters. It's like, oh, it's just a bummer. Poor Hebe. Okay, and I did say, Nike. Nike's an interesting one. Nike is the goddess of victory and also high-performance shoe wear. Joke. Nike's one of those characters, again, who really doesn't appear much in myth. Maybe I'll do like a story, maybe I'll do a special episode of like goddesses who have high name recognition ability, appear in art a lot, and have like no stories. Maybe I could throw like Eos in there, like the Dawn. Like, just these ideas. Or maybe I'll do a special week of it. I'll have to do some research to see if Nike really has any sort of embodiment other than being often just a component of statues of Athena, where she's holding her in her hand to symbolize victory. I'll have to see if there's enough to really make an episode about her. So, as I mentioned, I have to end this episode a little bit quicker than usual, so I'm going to actually start my sign-off now. I want to say thank you, everybody, for watching. It's always my greatest pleasure of the week to be able to do these with you. It really gives me something as far as the schedule, which is nice. Otherwise, I'm just in my room drawing all day. We already did Nemesis, too. Check it out on the thing. I love doing this. I love speaking with you all. So join me back here, please, on Monday, where we're going to finally give Zeus, the king of the gods, his proper due. All right, thanks so much, everybody. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.